What is up, guys? In this video we're going to be installing these BC Racing DS series coilovers on my Focus ST, which it is a much needed upgrade. I've been running this car on Racelands for probably about almost 2 years, and although they're okay for daily driving, with me doing autocross and everything, I'd really like to switch to a more quality coilover with more adjustability. And I am a huge fan of Adam LZ. I've been watching him since he was in college a long time ago, and he's doing a giveaway for the NSX, and I decided why not the perfect time to order the coilovers from him since he's an official dealer, and I got a ton of entries for the giveaway, so hopefully I win that. That would obviously be really cool. But then I also get these coilovers, which are much needed for this car, and I'm really excited to have the adjustability and everything of them. And the quality is just amazing. I've already unwrapped everything and looked at it. They are brand new. They come with a certificate and sticker and warranty information and all that. And I am not patient at all, and I already went ahead and put on the BC Racing sticker, which fits perfectly in my window like that. And then it also came with a free LZMFG and BC Racing t-shirt, so that's always great too. But these are the DS series, which the most popular series is the BR series, which is the more affordable version. But these have a digressive piston inside, which from my understanding pretty much it'll give you like a smoother ride, like daily driving the car easy. But then whenever it hits like a bump and it is like a lot higher speed and more aggressive, they will stiffen up and respond better. That might not be a great explanation. You can research it on your own. But long story short, they're more expensive, but they are also just better. And it wasn't a whole lot more, but I figured out, I heard several people say that the BR series rides a lot like the Racelands. So I did not want to risk paying that extra money and then just getting a very similar coilover. So I decided to spend the extra money and get the super nice ones, because I really am probably never going to sell this car, and I just want to go back and fix all my shortcuts and make it super nice. So enough of the talking, let's get into looking at the coilovers. The fronts for Focus ST are together, and then the rears you have the shock and spring separate, and the spring is going to be what adjusts the height. So here are the things that adjust the height, and the spring sits on that and the rear spring perch, and then these rubber things go on top. And these are not the extreme low versions, these are just the regular ones. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to go as low as I am now, which I want to raise the car a little bit, maybe like very slightly, maybe like a quarter or half inch. So my plan is to set these coilovers at the exact same height as the Racelands, and these are stiffer. I got custom spring rates. They're 7K front and 7K rear, because I asked some professionals who know a lot about suspension, and they said that's what would be the best, because my car's a mix between daily and autocross, and I also like it to handle more aggressively. And then in addition to the spring rates, they are also adjustable dampening, which on the rear you can see, if it'll focus, this says H and S, which hard and soft, and you twist this little knob and it adjusts them. And I set the fronts to full stiff, and then I set the rears to full stiff, and then turned them back soft 10 clicks, and there's 30 clicks of dampening adjustment, because I have an autocross event coming up, and I figured I might as well put them in at the stiffest setting, because theoretically that should handle the best. And then if it's just completely unbearable for daily driving, I can always decrease it fairly easily. And the reason I didn't put the rears at full stiff is because I have a pretty thick rear sway bar, and that already causes the rear end to kick out during autocross. So I don't want to overdo that and then just lose my rear traction. At least, you do want a little bit of rotation, but I don't want to go too far. So that's why I kind of have them at like 2/3 stiffness. But let's go ahead and get started with the installation. It is about to get dark, so I'm probably going to do the rears today, and then tomorrow I'll go ahead and finish the fronts. So I'm going to go ahead and get this jacked up and get the wheel off, and then we'll get started. So now that the wheel is off, I'm going to show you the bolts you need to remove to take the rear suspension out, you're going to see this one right here you will want to remove. And kind of looks like my bushing's a little messed up. But anyways, you remove that bolt there, and then you'll pretty much be able to hammer this down, and you'll be able to get the spring to pop out there, and that'll just kind of dangle. And then up here we have 2 bolts up in there that need to be removed, and then there's 1 bolt holding the bottom of the strut on there. And once you remove those, all of this will just pop right out, and we can just slap new stuff in. Shouldn't be too hard. Make sure you have a breaker bar on hand, because all of these suspension bolts get rusty and are super tight, and especially if you have stock suspension, it'll be a little bit harder. So that's what we're going to remove, and everything should pop out, and then I'll show you how everything else goes in. So I got the old Raceland spring out. It was pretty easy. Just took that bolt out there using a breaker bar, and then used that socket. And you can see there it is dangling. And to help you get the bolt out, you'll want to put a jack underneath this bottom piece right here, and jack it up maybe like 1/4 of an inch, and that'll make the bolt loose. Then you can just pull it out with your hands once you got it out of the threads on the other side there. And as you can see, if you are switching from stock suspension to BC coilovers, clearly it will be different, but it also is a little bit different from just Raceland, because they only have height adjustment on these springs here. And that's also how you change the height on the BC coilovers, but it also has an adjustable bottom portion of the shock. And in the instructions, they note the specific process for how to get that dialed in correctly. And what you want to start with is you'll put this in and bolt it in on the top holes up there, and then you will put your spring in and have it adjusted at whatever height you want. And once you have the spring in there, you will put the jack underneath the arm right here and jack it up about 1/4 of an inch, and then you will see where the BC shock aligns on that hole there, and then you will just align it and spin it to align with the hole, and then that's when you will bolt it in. They describe this in the instructions, but that's just an explanation on what to do, because I can't really like film that or anything. But I'm just going to go ahead and get the Raceland shock taken out, or if you have a stock one, take that one out. It's just 2 bolts up there, then the 1 bolt at the bottom. And then I'm going to put in the BC spring, and I'm kind of just comparing the height here, and they look to be just about the same, if not a little bit lower than how I had the Raceland ones, but the Raceland ones are pretty soft, so I'm assuming it'll sit at about the same height, and then I can just adjust it from there if I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. Here is the correct way on how to put them together. It is very confusing. BC does not give you instructions on how to do it, and the other YouTube videos showing you how to install them do not do a great job of explaining this, so I'm just going to make it as clear as I can. So this is the bottom piece, right? And it comes with this already screwed together, so you'll have this bolt in there and it won't be moving around, and you think that's just how it is. Well, you have to take this bolt off and take this piece off, and it actually goes underneath here, and then the bolt will go through the underside, and then this goes on the inside here, and this is basically clamped and bolted into the arm right here, and it will not budge, so it should be like tight clamped on the metal of that. And then your height adjustment is going to be way too low to even get to it, so you can't even get to your height adjustment. You just have to take the whole thing out if you want to adjust your height. So that's kind of a pain, but that's really the only way that it goes together. And then you take the plastic ring here, not this rubber one that was in the package. You take the plastic one, and the plastic one goes over that. And then you take your spring, the spring will go in there, and then this is the last piece. You put this just like that on the top, and this will fit up inside there perfectly, and that's how it'll go. I have no idea why they give you these. Mine is a 2013, and I know some of them had different suspension, but the 2013s were the ones that are supposed to have the different suspension, so I really don't know what this little rubber piece is for, but there's no way it fits in there anywhere, so I'm just not going to use it, and we're just going to install it like this, and I'll let you know if I run into any problems. So you can see I have the BC Racing shock put in, and also the spring. You can see how that part right there is bolted in, and then there's the height adjustment. I decided to just go ahead and max these out at the lowest they'd go because they're not the extreme low ones, so I really don't think they can go that low, so I just went ahead and put them all the way down, and hopefully that's close to where I was at last time. And I'm pretty much just going to try to get it maybe about a 1/4 inch higher than I had the Raceland, so that's not a big enough difference. I'd have to reset all the sway bar end links and everything. But you can see you start by putting the 2 bolts up there, and you want to make sure that those are really tight, because oftentimes those will cause squeaking and noise if you do not get those top 2 bolts really tight. So be mindful of that. But then you can see right here how it doesn't align. Well, what you want to do is put your jack underneath here and jack it up about 1/4 inch just to get some pressure on that spring there, and then you'll lower this until you can see it's kind of bendy. You just kind of push it back and lower it to where the bolt hole lines up, and then you'll put the bolt in and bolt it on. So now everything is bolted back together. Don't forget to tighten this locking collar once you spin this to the right amount, and you have very limited room in here to spin the bolt at the bottom of the shock, but it is what it is. It just takes a while, but the rear isn't too hard. Just make sure that you get this rubber piece on the top of the spring seated correctly, check all your bolts, make sure they're tight, and then you should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side tonight, and then tomorrow we will start on getting the front done. Alright, so it is the next day. We got some daylight this time, and it is beautiful weather. So now it is time to install the front coilovers. And after installing the rears and kind of like jumping on it and seeing how soft it was, I decided to go all the way hard on the fronts and then go back towards soft 5 clicks. And I don't know, I'm just going to adjust it from there. I feel like I shouldn't have the fronts at full stiff and then the rears 10 clicks back. So we're just going to test that out and see. And then based off some posts I saw online, I'm going to adjust these to where they have about 1 inch of threads, and I think that's going to be the right height that I want in the front, because the rear sits a little bit higher than it did before, but it's actually, these are maxed out all the way low. So if you have BCDS Racing coilovers, I also think these are probably the same as the BR series, as long as you don't have the extreme low versions, but this is maximum low for the rear, which honestly I think is the perfect height for this car, especially with my spec wheels. They're 18 by 8.5 plus 35 for the offset. So the offset's a tad aggressive. They almost fit like a 9.5 wide wheel with like a higher offset. So I definitely I want to keep these wheels because I love them, but I think whenever these tires run out, I'm going to get these powder coated mag blue, and then I'm also going to have the RS brakes on this, so it'll kind of match the blue and blue. And then I want to put a bigger tire on there. As you can see, I have a little space. I'm thinking this is a 235/40/18, and I'm thinking about putting on a 255/35/18, because it'll be a shorter sidewall, but it'll be wider, so I can get more grip and then also more responsiveness because the smaller sidewall, but it'll be very slight because my stock wheels, I run 255/35/18s, and then I run them with 20mm spacers, and they fit just a little bit tighter than these do. So I think I could fit them on with these wheels, and then if I do that and then they rub, I'll just raise the car up because I don't really mind. I want to get another car anyways as like a daily, and then I kind of turn it into like a little like stance slash drift build out of that. And then this car can kind of be the more purpose-built car with higher suspension and everything like that, so I don't really mind. I can get the little itch to be slammed out of another car. But yeah, I'm in the process of, this is kind of just like V1 of the car, how I always imagined it. Now moving on to V2, which is going to be kind of like de-ricing it and making it more purpose-built. And the coilovers are the first step, getting rid of the race lands that go low, and then now it'll be on the BC coilovers, which are a lot more performance-based. Going to redo all the aero, take the taillight tint off. I'm going to fix this spoiler and put the ST spoiler on it and make an extension for it, and redo the diffuser, make a functional one, all that kind of stuff. So my plan is to have this car be a perfect mix of form and function. But enough talking, let's go ahead and get the front jacked up and get the wheel off and get started on installing the fronts. So I got the wheel off, and to install the fronts you're going to have to take the cowl off here, and all you got to do is take these plastic things off. They just pull off. Take this bolt out here, and you can see there's the bolt for one of the strut bolts, and then you take out these Torx bolts, and then there's these plastic clips here that you can take out to make it easier, but you don't necessarily have to, because this whole piece is another piece under here that those clips attach to, and it'll all come out as one. And a little tip for this that I've learned after having to take it apart many times is, do not take your wipers off. That is the biggest hassle ever. They're really hard to get off. Once you get them on, it's just a pain to realign them. You don't want to deal with that, trust me. All you need to do is see this little plastic piece right here, just cut a slit in it, and then you can pull this cowl around the wiper without having to remove the wiper, and trust me, it'll make the taking it out and putting it back in so much easier, because I've put coilovers on several times, had to do O2 sensor, intake, whatever. It's just, make sure you do that, it'll make your life 10 times easier. Then once you have that off, we will move down here. I'm just going to start by taking off the brake line bracket here, and then right here you have the sway bar that's mounted to the back, and then, oh wait, this isn't, oh yeah, that is the brake line. I don't really know what this is. I think this is the wheel speed sensor here. And anyways, you'll take this off. This is a little difficult to get off. Sometimes you can just zap it off with an impact, but actually a lot of people don't know this, is actually behind here, it's not like a bolt, but it's like it's almost like an oval, but like two of the sides are straight, and you can actually fit a wrench back here and it'll hold it for you, and then you can just take this bolt off with an impact super easy. I don't know which size it is, I don't remember, but I will figure that out and let you know whenever I can test a bunch of wrenches back there. But it's just kind of right back here, you can barely fit a wrench in there. Or if you just want to use a crescent wrench, and then you can put an Allen key in there. But that's just, I don't know, that's a little bit harder. And then once you get all those off, I'll move this out of the way. And this part right here is very difficult to get out, especially if you have stock suspension, because it's a lot taller and it pushes itself in there. So this is basically clamped in there from this bolt back here. And there's two ways to go about this that are worth your time. I've seen so many people do this the wrong way and cost themselves like a lot more work than they need to. So there's only two ways that you should be doing this. One of them is with a strut spreader tool, which is what I have here, because it came with my race lands, which you can also just buy these on Amazon or something. And you can see it's got an oval, and that fits in the hole there. And then you twist it with a socket like that, and it will spread this metal part here out to where you have loose room to get the bottom of the strut out of there. And then basically you just jump on this here and then yank on this, and then you'll want to loosen the 3 bolts up here, but leave them in, but just loosen them so it can wiggle around. And then you just jump on this until that pops out, and then you can get it out. You can also try to put a little bit of WD-40 down in there to help loosen it up and lubricate it, or like some PB blaster. So that is the first method, but if you don't want to buy one of these, there actually is another way you can do it, which is free. And you take your bolt out here, and I can't really show it, but back here there's going to be like an opening where this clamps into. So take this bolt completely out, then get a spare piece of metal and slide it in the opening right here, and then re-put the bolt back in up against the piece of metal and just tighten it a little bit until the bolt presses up against the metal, and it'll force this thing to open up a little bit, and then that'll give you plenty of room to get the bottom of the strut out. And actually that way you can get this way more open than using the strut spreader tool, so it actually might make it a little easier. But don't go too far because you don't want to bend this or break it or mess up the threads. But that is another alternative way to get that out. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen everything and get the strut pulled out, and then we'll move on to putting the new one in. And then also for the BCs, I have them 5 clicks soft from all the way hard. And then I adjusted, I started to adjust the preload here because I'm stupid, and my Racelands, you adjust the height by adjusting the preload, which is terrible. Don't get coilovers that do that. And then you adjust the height from this here. So this is the height I'm going with. It's lower than how they came from the factory, because based on what I heard, about 1 inch of threads here is about the fitment I want from what my research was. So if you're looking to see how high they go, this is what I'm going to start off with. And you just loosen this collar here, twist the bottom up a little bit, and actually the way I got it to the same distance on each side was I made sure the preload was exactly the same on both. And then I just took like a little socket that I had. It was just like a, I don't know, like 15mm socket, and I put it in between there. And then I just tightened it up against the socket because it was the exact height I wanted. And I just did that on both sides, and now I know that it's exactly the same. Tightened it all back down, and it is all good to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove the old strut and get everything taken off so I can put in the new one. And also, whenever you take this off, for me, taking this off the sway bar, all I had to do was zap it with an impact with a 15mm socket on it, and it actually came off pretty easy. If it doesn't, throw some PB blaster on there. This one came out super easy, just a tiny little bolt. And then I sprayed some PB blaster down there so it can get soaking. And then for your wheel speed sensor is what I'm pretty sure this is. Make sure that you take this off. It just slides into that little indentation there. And when you take that off, this won't have any pressure on it. And then whenever you take your strut out, just be careful not to use this as like a limiting strap and pull on it too much. But other than that, should be good. Here's what it looks like with the cowl off. So I'm just going to loosen all 3 of these bolts right here just a little bit. And then I'm going to use a breaker bar to loosen this bolt here and take that out. And then I'm just going to put the strut spreader in the back. It just goes in like this. You twist it and it'll open. And then I'll just jump on this until I can rip this thing out. And that's pretty much it. Coilovers on this car should not be a super difficult job as long as you do it correctly. I've seen, like I mentioned before, I've seen a lot of people do this job wrong, and it really shouldn't be too hard unless you run into an issue like a seized bolt or something. But the things you're going to need before you start, trust me, don't try to do it without these tools. You're going to need PB blaster, a breaker bar, a strut spreader tool, or whatever method you want to use. You can use the spare piece of metal method too. And then you're just going to want to make sure that you have plenty of different like extensions and sockets, because some stuff is really tight to get out. And then also, if you are taking your stock suspension out of the front, you might want to have someone else with you, because since it's so long, it's hard to get out of the spindle here. So usually what you have to do is have someone like stand on the lug nuts right here, and before you do that, always make sure you put the lug nuts back on the threads so you don't damage them. And then you just want to jump on this and pull it down, and then make sure those bolts are loose, and then have someone else with a mallet or just their hands try to pull the strut out this way, and then once you get it out of the spindle here, that's when you can take those bolts out, and you pretty much just have to rip it out. But that is a lot easier if you have two people, so you don't have to like jump on it at one time and then also try to pull it out. And another method you can use if you're doing this alone, this is probably what you'll want to do, is take a breaker bar, and you can kind of find a way. You want to be careful with this because you don't want to bend or damage anything, but you can find a way to pry it in here, and then you can push down on it with one hand, and that'll give you some leverage to push everything down, and then you can use your other hand to try to pull the strut out. But I hope that helps, because the first time I did coilovers on this car, it was awful, and it took me 2 days, and that seems to be a common theme when doing coilovers on a Focus ST, but I just want to give you all the little tips to make it as easy as possible. Another tip is turn your wheel out like this so that you have more room to fit the breaker bar in and take this bolt out. And all I had to do was 2 turns on that with the breaker bar. Is pretty easy to break loose. And then having an impact makes this job very easy. An impact with 15, 13, and 19 millimeter sockets will help you a ton. And then I just use that to back the bolt the rest of the way out. And this is already kind of loose in here, so I'm just going to put the strut spreader tool in, jump on this until I get the strut out, and then it's pretty much just the exact reverse process to put the new one in. So I got the Raceland coilover out. It came out very easily as soon as I took that bolt out. Since I've already used the strut spreader before, I didn't even need it. This was kind of just bent to where it came out super easily. And I drank a lot of caffeine, so I'm like shaking right now, and I can't even hold the camera still. But anyways, it came right out. I put a little PB blaster in there, and make sure you clean out the inside of your spindle before you put the new coilover in, just to make sure that it is in there perfectly how it is designed to. And you can see right there that I do not have an in link, because it decided that it would be a good idea to break right before I have to make an hour road trip later today. So that's cool. I'm just going to snap it back on there and probably put a bunch of electrical tape around it so that it stays on. And I already ordered some white line in links, so that video will be coming soon. But don't let this hang by the brake lines like I was doing. It's not a good idea. I'm just going to continue to do it though. Anyways, take your new coilover, and these have washers on them that you'll put over on the top, but put it in and put the top 3 bolts in first so that it dangles up there. Just leave them a little bit loose so you can move it around, and then this part right here goes in the back right there, and that'll keep it aligned, and then that's where the bolt goes through. And pretty much you just bolt everything in how you took it out. You know, the sway or the end link will go there with the bracket here, and then the brake line will screw onto that little mount, and that's pretty much it. You'll just tighten everything back up and it'll be good to go. And when installing the new one, since it'll be shorter, I held it up and then put the top 3 bolts in, and then I used the jack to jack the spindle up to where it aligns there. And then I'm going to tighten everything up, and once everything's tightened up, I will lower the jack back down. So everything is put back together, and I've checked all the bolts to make sure everything is tight. Here is my ghetto fix for the end link for the time being, because I have to make a road trip and it needs to stay on there. So that's that. It's wire and electrical tape. But all of these brackets are bolted back in. I checked the bolt back here. It's all tight. Make sure your locking collars are all tight. And then these up here are tight. Make sure you don't over torque these because they can snap. But other than that, it's ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and put the wheel back on and lower it and get the other side done. And then I'll show you what the car looks like when all 4 coilovers are put on. So they are all 4 installed, and I took it to the car wash and washed it and tested them out, and it handles a lot better. The way that it handles the bumps are a lot better. I'll have to make a review video several months down the line after I've had them for a while. But the rear was pretty stiff. I only had it 4 clicks away from max hard, and it was like when I was hitting bumps, it was kind of like bouncing up in the air, so I turned it 7 clicks towards soft. Since I have the 7K springs in the rear and also a thick sway bar, I probably shouldn't have had it that much stiff. The front feels just about perfect other than the height. I'm going to lower it just a tad in the front just to get the fitment even and perfect. But other than that, I'm very impressed with them. I think they're worth the money. You should definitely get these the first time around and not cheap out on coilovers like I did. But I have an autocross event next week, so I'll be able to test them out and a lot better then. But so far, I have a good first impression of them, and I do not regret spending the money on them and replacing the Racelands. And then it just kind of goes with the theme I'm taking with the car next. But that's pretty much it for this video. Please leave a like and subscribe and follow me on Instagram at Nickjoenap, and I will see you in the next video.